So today we're looking at how to launch your digital platform or idea successfully. And the first step towards doing that is always market research. So there are two main types of market research. Primary, which is where you're going out and directly gathering up research and insights yourself. And then secondary, which is about collating and synthesizing third-party research and drawing insights from that yourself. There are loads of different ways to go around collecting secondary research, and that can start from something as simple as using Google's keyword researcher or Google Trends, which gives you an insight into what people are currently searching for on the web, and using that to understand whether your idea or your problem that you're trying to solve actually exists for customers out there in the real world. You can also go to third-party publications who will do research and provide insight into what's happening into a specific industry or segment that you're interested in targeting in. And these can bring you a whole wealth of information around what's going on in that market and how you might be able to tap into it. You'll also want to have a look at what your competitors are doing. And indeed, are there any competitors? It can actually be a worrying sign if you don't have competition in your industry. So it's really important to understand how people are already solving the problem that you're trying to solve for your customers, and equally understanding how you're different to those customers and how you solve that problem more effectively or more efficiently than your competitors. Positioning yourself in the market will be a really, really important part of making your business a success. So once you've gathered up all that information, the next thing to do is to try and hone in and pick the segment and identify your target customers. There's no point trying to design a product or a service which is kind of mediocre or okay for everyone, particularly if it's a new service. It needs to be fantastic for someone. And the only way that we reach that level of exceptional is by being really targeted with who we're designing for. So we're going to look at all that market research, understand which customer segment is perhaps being least effectively served or has the most opportunity in terms of providing a valuable service. And once we've identified that, we'll then design a product which is specifically created for them. And that way we know we're going to more quickly hit product market fit and hopefully create a really successful business. So once we've got a really good understanding of the customer, their problem, and we've identified our target market and a solution which we think is going to be valuable to them, the next step is to really understand whether there's a feasible business model that sits behind delivering that solution. Now, to understand this, you might hear people talking about unit economics, and this is where we look at the cost and profit of delivering a single unit of that service or product to customers in order to understand at a kind of more granular level how profitable the business is. Now, there are some really important metrics to look at within that. So you can see how expensive it is to acquire a customer. So a cost per acquisition, or CPA, will tell you how much it costs through all your various marketing efforts to get someone from not knowing about you to being a customer of your product. And then also the lifetime value, or LTV, is another really important metric to track, which tells you how valuable a single customer is to you over their lifetime of interaction with you as a service. So, for example, if you're an e-commerce business, how many times will someone likely reorder with you over a period of time? Or maybe if you're a subscription business, how long will they stay with you before they churn or stop their subscription? Making sure that your lifetime value is much higher than your cost of acquisition is obviously very important for your unit economics. But this principle applies to everything, so it's really important to understand exactly what it costs to produce your service, and then understanding how much people will be willing to pay. I think what's really important to note though, especially in a startup kind of life cycle, is that in the early days, your unit economics are unlikely to be very good. It will be very expensive to acquire customers. It will be very expensive to produce your service, and it's unlikely that you'll be profitable at that point. What's really important to understand is what level of CPA, for example, do you need to get down to, and you can get better economies of scale. You can become more optimized at converting customers. So what do you need to get that down to over a period of time in order for the business to become profitable? And that's the same with everything. So understanding that as the business grows, you'll be able to benefit from economies of scale is important. Just knowing where you've got to get to and whether that looks feasible is really, really important. So once we've got all our market research, we're happy that there's a feasible business model behind our idea, it's really important that we then go out and test ideas with customers. And there are three core kind of types of user testing that we do at Unfold, which enable us to gain insight into customers. The first kind of group of user research we do is problem testing. So going out, speaking to customers and trying to understand whether the problem that we think they have actually exists in real life, or have we made some incorrect assumptions. So for example, if I was interested in producing a service which was a CCTV system for cat owners, I might go and speak to some people with cats and ask them whether they're worried about what their cat is doing at home while they're not around. So I don't want to kind of show them the solution. I just want to understand whether the problem that I think they're facing exists before I start designing solutions. The second group of user researching we do is more solution focused. So if we've identified that cat owners are indeed really worried about what their cats are doing while they're not at home, we can start to come up with some solutions and put those to the test with users. So would a camera which shows you what your cat's doing help you, put your mind at ease? Could we create some prototypes, or could we create something which mimics that service or experience for the customer to see if it works in real life? So that's really, really key. The third group of user research that we do, and this is about post-launch, because nothing ever kind of stops when it comes to product design and iterating and improving your product, is optimization testing. So as soon as something's launched, we want to learn and validate the assumptions that we made at the beginning of the design process, and then use those to understand how users are using the service, what areas can be improved, and really try to use data to help guide the decision-making process around what to change and what features to introduce onto the platform as well. So we couldn't do a video on how to launch a successful tech platform or business without addressing the all-important question around funding. Now, there are so many different routes which you can take in order to receive funding or investment for your idea, but we wanted to address two and then give you some top tips on how to actually go about being successful. So the two major kinds that you'll be looking at are equity investment, which is where someone will give you money in return for a share of your business. So think Dragon's Den. But that can come from a whole range of sources. So angel investors, who are kind of high net worth individuals, through to crowdfunding platforms like Seedrs or Crowdcube, right up to much more institutional investors such as venture capital. And who you'll be approaching will be determined by what stage of business you're at and how much money you are looking to raise. The second type you can also consider is non-dilutive funding. So organisations like Innovate UK give out grant funding, which is money which you don't have to give away any equity for, in order to fund innovative projects or businesses. Regardless of which one you're approaching though, our top tip is to get in touch with them early. So with grant funding, you typically need to be 12 to 18 months ahead of when that project is due to kick off in order to get through the whole application process, because it's very competitive and takes quite a long time. But equally with equity investment, you want to be building relationships with investors, trying to understand what it is they want to see from your business, what metrics you need to hit, but equally understanding what kind of businesses they invest in. Do they only look at things in certain sectors or using certain technologies? Because you don't want to spend lots of time pitching to someone who only invests in something other than what you're doing. So it's really important to build those relationships early, and that will help set you up for success on your funding journey. So now we've done all our market research, we've got some customers who are dying to try our product, we've received funding, and we've got a really good idea about how feasible the business model is. It's time to do the really exciting work of creating the digital product through a design and build process. Now, it's really, really important to remember that no matter what stage of business you are, whether this is really early stage or you're a huge business launching a new product, we need to stay lean and iterate and think about the principles of designing a minimum viable product, or MVP. Now, an MVP is basically a school of thought in which we produce a product which is going to give us the most amount of validated learning, so how a customer is going to use this in the real world, whilst doing the least amount of effort. So how do we save on resources of time, money and effort in order to get that first piece of learning. And again, depending on the stage that you're at, I would encourage you to design in a way that is fitting of how confident or how advanced you are as a business. So that can be anything from sketching things out on paper right through to creating wireframes on a piece of digital design software such as Figma or XD, and then moving that up to UI designs and complete mock-ups for how the product will work, and then actually developing some technology to build out that product. But at each stage, being really kind of careful to test that with users to understand how the decisions we're making in the design process are going to impact users and how valuable those are going to be to customers, because that will help us to determine what we need to prioritize in terms of the build, which features need to go in, and which ones perhaps we can leave until later on in the process. So through that design process, no matter what, the one key thing to take away is that you need to keep users at the center. So get the whole team involved, from engineering, design, marketing, business, but align that team around the user, and producing the best possible solution for them is absolutely key to launching that successful digital product. If you need any information on what that design or development process looks like, we've got a fantastic guide on our website called Prototyping from Idea to Reality, which takes you through all the steps and has some handy exercises and tools which you can use throughout the process to get from those discussions through to a full prototyped MVP. So do check that out, and we'll provide a link below as well. Thanks so much for watching.